Let's talk about, people might be surprised by this, but Bob Dylan, right? I think this is just the quintessential example. Why is he relevant to what we're talking about?
When this idea popped in my head, I had finished a third biography and contrasted it with these other two, and I just saw all these patterns. VC is a game of pattern recognition. I guess my brain's just developed. I was like, oh my God, I saw this kind of lock thing where these three people had all done the same thing. And one was a basketball coach, one was a restaurateur, and the other was Bob Dylan. Not people not industry. Oh, this is where you should get career development advice, right? There's a part of the Dylan story that most people wouldn't know unless they had read all the biographies or maybe seen the Scorsese documentary. But the new movie misses the whole thing, which is the pre-New York Bob Dylan was hanging out in Minnesota, studying folk music at such a deep level that I feel confident in saying when he left, he knew more about folk music than any other human in Minnesota. And he was borrowing, maybe that's even a euphemism, he was stealing his friends' albums. He was going into the record store, into these listening booths. Like, he knew all there was to know and had studied every bit of it. And he's referred to by Scorsese as a music expeditionary. And the people that knew him in New York said he could mimic anyone's song. It's not what you would think of when you hear a Dylan song, that he had kind of mastered the bedrock underneath and then started innovating. Picasso, by the way, the same thing. Perfect realist painter at age 14. If you go to the Barcelona Picasso Museum, it's in geographic order, and you're kind of shocked at how good a realist this kid was before he went and did this other thing. Mm-hmm. That bedrock knowledge, I think, is so differentiating for someone to have all the history and then to start doing the innovation.
What was the before and after on Dylan, sort of Minnesota, New York City? And why is that such an important
By the way,
piece of the
and just to even pile on more on this kind of studious part of Bob Dylan, he did a podcast series for a while where he just walks through all these different genres of music. And
you're talking about Bob Dylan himself?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't realize this.
You can go find it. He stopped, and then that book he put out of the 50 best songs, the coffee table book that came out 2 years ago, it's incredible the amount of knowledge he has about songs, outside of his genre, everything. So he's a clear student of what he's doing. I think this is well known and is covered at the beginning of the movie. He went to New York to find Woody Guthrie, probably the single kind of most deterministic and ambitious mentor pursuit story that I've ever heard of. Like, he hitchhiked there with no money and found him and became friends with him.
This echoes back to go where the action is also.
Oh, no doubt. And by the way, he landed, in Manhattan at the center of the folk music scene, and all those people he was studying when he was listening in Minnesota, they were all there. He got to know them all. If that doesn't happen, I don't think Dylan happens.
How relevant do you think the go where the action is now, considering the access to information using ChatGPT or other tools, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Maybe less so access to mentors, although you can have virtual relationships. But how relevant do you think that is? I've got my own opinion, but
you could certainly have the type of peer and mentor experiences that are remote. I have a great anecdote about Mr. Beast in the book that we could talk about that was a remote one. But the benefits of being in and around a whole bunch of people that are chasing the same thing is so high. And I think the intuition is, oh, well, it's going to be even more competitive. So why would I go? Wouldn't it be better to try and do this in a town where it's less of a big deal? But the problem is your learning is impacted. Your access to peers and mentors is drastically reduced. And then probably most importantly, your optionality gets cut so dramatically. People think that a lot of success stories, they attribute it to luck. But, there's that famous saying, luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And when you're in the epicenter, both your preparation and your opportunity go up, 10x. And so your ability to just have that lucky moment where you get brought into something is so much higher.
So the lucky moment is, I think, really important to underscore in terms of going where the action is, because there's a lot you can do virtually. But let's just say you're using ChatGPT, you're going to get what you prompt. In other words, like you're asking for something,
Yeah.
and that can take you down a rabbit hole. But there, at least in my lived experience, and certainly I still see this happening, when I moved to Silicon Valley in 2000, and then I look back at my angel investing career, I look back at all these collaborations, the vast majority of them did not come from me going out with an agenda and seeking something. They came from serendipitous bumping into somebody at a coffee shop. I literally met Naval Ravikant because I was hitting on his girlfriend at the time when she was getting her coffee. Didn't realize they were together. And then you look at Garrett Camp, Kevin Rose. These are like at a barbecue. I met Kevin Rose. And you go down the list and you look at all of these formative, massively impactful, personally and professionally relationships. They almost all came from serendipity. And you just don't seem to get that density unless you're in the center of the action. And perhaps it's easier to relocate yourself. I'm sure it is when you have fewer responsibilities. But God, I can't even imagine what my life would have looked like had I not left Long Island and then ultimately moved to Silicon Valley.
Same for me. I had thought about the notion of venture capital and practicing it, and probably would have jumped at any job I could have got. Like when I was at McCombs here in Austin, I tried to get an interview at Austin Ventures. Like I didn't get one, but had they said yes, maybe I practiced there. And I'm glad that didn't happen. Going and practicing it where I did was the exact right place to do it. I do think if you can, because there are financial constraints, if you want to be great at a field and that field has an epicenter, I think you should go.
And there are different types of epicenters too. Like you think about, let's just say AI, not to repeatedly bang that drum, but you could just say, okay, AI, first thing that comes to mind, Silicon Valley. But this is going to be a bit of a digression, but I remember asking Derek Sivers, a friend of mine, amazing entrepreneur, kind of philosopher, programmer, people can look him up. But I asked him, who's the first person who comes to mind when you think of the word successful? And he said, well, actually, the most interesting or more interesting question might be, who's the third person who comes to mind? Because I might say something really obvious like Richard Branson, but is he successful? I don't really know what his goals were. So I'd have to compare his goals to his outcomes. And then you get to the thirds. Similarly, with an epicenter, you could say Silicon Valley first, but there might be something that is dense in learning, but has other advantages. Like, I think it's the University of Waterloo, but one of these universities where industry is trying to raid the academic program because it's so strong in terms of teaching the technical side.